Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, guys, from everyone joined all around the world. You know, Thank you very much for joining. So today is our fourth session, but even though we're talking about day 3 here, the last week we had an additional extra session that was there. Predominantly, we have a concept-based approach for a DevSecOps perspective, and this is your regular what we have out there. Uh, So this people have been joining for this particular part. So this is where we'll talk about DevOps, DevSecOps, and how it is going to be useful. In the previous sections, we spoke about security awareness. What is security awareness? Because a lot of people, when we coming to DevOps, they know some level of operations or development environment. They do come from there and they want to jump into this. They might have heard about it. And some IT jargons are much more easier to know them. But when it comes to security, a lot of things are new. So in the first week, we spoke about security awareness and we introduced ourselves and the people attending to the security concept and why it is important and what is going to come into that part. In the second week, we spoke about job roles of a penetration tester and infrastructure security. And there we saw how penetration testing plays an important role in today's world and why it is important. Right? Even though there are so many security appliances, security features are used by organizations, we saw why penetration testing plays a very important role in our day-to-day activities in an IT environment out there. But today we are going to speak about DevSecOps. Right? DevSecOps is very new. A lot of demand for the openings are there. I think after DevOps, people are expecting DevOps engineer to have a DevSecOps experience as well. So we'll be diving into that part. And the next week, we're going to talk about cloud security, right? So, but let's understand what is a DevOps part. So before we could understand DevSecOps, we need to understand what is DevOps, right? It is important because security is only going to be good when you understand the underlying technology well and what you can do and things like that. And we'll look at the challenges that we face in a DevOps environment, and then we'll see how DevSecOps is going to help you do with this process, right? So let's dive into it. Yeah, and this is an interactive session. There is no mandate that only I will be speaking out there. You can unmute yourself, stop me from continuing the close, and you can ask any question you want, right? So let's not delay. Let's start. Right. So a standard definition for DevOps can be explained as a people working together to conceive, build, and deliver secure software at top speed. DevOps practice enables software development and operations team to accelerate delivery to automation, collaboration, fast feedback, and iterative improvement. Right. Stemming from an agile approach to software development, DevOps process expands on cross-functional approach of building and shipping appliances in a faster, more iterative manner. Right. So what does they mean about it? Right. What is the security? What is the problems they were facing before to achieve this kind of a process of right? What Let's look at from a practical perspective. Because every problem is going to be every solution what we are going to see out there, it is going to be providing a solution to some kind of a problem. Right, so let's understand what is the problem faced and that particular problem solved by the DevOps. So initially what used to happen is that there's a software development environment. There's what is called as a waterfall model. Right? There are different stages of an software development. So one is the requirement phase where we're talking about the collecting information from the customer, designing what software they want, and that they're going to work on it. And second phase is the design phase. I'm just broadly describing. There will be more stages for here as well. And third stage is implementation, right? Then after implementation, there's going to be testing. And after the testing, it is where you see the final implementation. This is the coding part, right? And finally, the website or the application is going to live in the fall. And this is called as a waterfall model, as you can see. Each stage is coming one after the other, similarly like a waterfall. It is moving out here. So this is a very good model software development model when you're talking about legacy software. Legacy software meaning like a banking, banking meaning core banking, right? So where you're putting your money inside the bank, the teller is giving you the money, you're withdrawing cash and things, everything. There, the reason why it is good is that the functionalities of the application is not changed, right? The process of depositing money, process of transferring money, process of withdrawing money, all those is going to remain same. And this is going to be work wonderfully well. And here the cycle is going to be quite long. On an average, it goes from 4 to 6 months. Something which gets completed in 6 months, it's a good success. But there is a problem here, right? Even though it works very well for the core banking, the problem with this is that it is the design team is working in a separately, the developers are working separately, and testing team is separately completely out there. And the current situation, what happens is that the new technology or the new services, right? When you talk about Amazon, online shopping, and everything, if we cannot take 6 months to implement any kind of a feature because it's constantly changing, new features need to be added once in everything, and we can't go to the traditional process that is going to be there, right? And also, we need some kind of an automation that is going to be needed out here. Without automation, this is not going to work out there, right? So to overcome all this process, that is everything, we came up with something called as the DevOps, right? DevOps is basically we talk about in an approach where the software is released instead of 4 to 6 months, between 15 to 1 month, 15 days to 1 month, right? So here the requirement are not taken as a bundle, but they are divided into small chunks, right? The previously what happened was when they took the requirement and they worked on requirement, by the time the software went live, that requirement was no longer available of the because the system had software has evolved, the market had evolved, and they wanted new feature, and every time they were catching it up. Now it is possible to make modifications for that process, right? So DevOps brings in two things, that is getting the development and the operations team together. Previously, they were not working on it, and now they're able to work on that process out there, right? And one of the main things that we see is that virtualization got much more into deeper effect, right? So Dockers and things and all came in much later when people started aggressively accepting cloud computing, and virtual machines were a bit expensive for that, but they provide the same kind of a feature, right? So one of the reasons why it is important there is that previously a developer one will be running Windows, let's say Vista at that time. The developer two is running, Windows 7, something like that. And the first testing server will be running somewhere like Windows Server 2008, right? And the production server is going to be, or the production where the main application is going to be, it might be running Windows Server 2012. The problem with this approach is that every time the software is moving, it is changing the development environment. Even though the Windows is same operating system, the software could have bugs, and this becomes a major issue. So that is where your virtualization and your containers comes into play, right? So because now either your virtual machine or a container will have a same interface for everyone, irrespective of their what operating system are they running on. Right? So this becomes a very important advantage, right? That is the main thing. But again, there was a problem here. The software was getting developed in time and things like that, but security was not always done separately. The main reason for this was the lack of lack of talent, right? And this is still present. There was a time the ratio was 1:1,000. I mean, for every one hacker, for the legal ethical hacker, there were 1,000 developers. That was much difficult. So they could not get enough security personnel to get to work in the team, and they still face a heavy shortage, right? Because security is something, it's a bit of a niche. Not everyone is able to, do well in security. There is the pain you have to go through to understand and concepts and things is a bit more deeper here, right? So now, how do we overcome this? How do we overcome the lack of users out there? And second thing is that the security was done once the application went live, right? When it is live, all code is complete, right? And this is what is happening out there. Now I do the pen test and I will come up with a 70-page report, right? Telling that there is about 30 vulnerabilities in your application. You can't go live. And this has happened in real time, right? I was working for a Middle Eastern bank. They had a particular app for an iPad device only. That is not any other app. That is only for an iPad. That was basically for the manager who is going to interact with the high-end customers. So that particular app is going to be used only if that customer is having $1 million as a deposit. So what they use, that they take that app to get more investment from the customer, and they were supposed to launch that app on the particular time frame, right? They asked us to test it. So we tested it, and there was a critical vulnerability in that application. So we told, you can't launch it. You can't launch it, and they got really pissed. They told, no, you have to allow. There's small things we do and everything other. We told no, and the chief information security officer was also contacted everyone, top tier management, because every single day this app delays in, right, being launched. They're losing millions, the millions of dollars they're losing out there. Even though the app for development, it took very small time and small team and able to do it, but they can't take it to the customer and showcase the activity and help them invest, right? Because because huge customers are going to invest heavy amount and they're losing out money on that part, right? So finally we told them we have to fix it, and they told, okay, we'll fix it. It got delayed by 10 days before they could fix it, but that was an issue, and they still lose a lot of money. So now the question is how to avoid this kind of situation. And this is where your DevSecOps comes into play, right? So let's see few of the other challenges in a DevSecOps environment, and we'll also see that perspective, right? So one of the main thing is speed was a security, right? Uh, what are the problems that we could face in DevSecOps and security challenges is while implementing a DevSecOps services, right? Do we want speed or do we want increased security, right? You always have to understand this. Speed is predominantly, you can take it as an ease of usability, and security is something is going to affect the usability, right? The more secure it is going to be difficult to use, and the less secure it is going to be easy to use it, right? That's the point of that. But we always have to look at what is the right thing. Okay, for instance, let's say if you have jewelry in your house, we are going to store that jewelry in a safe, which is going to be a bit more difficult to access and things, but it provides better security, right? But if you want to hide your chocolates from the children or someone else, you're not going to store your chocolates in the safe, right? Probably store it in the fridge and lock the fridge, right? That gives less security, but we have to understand what is more important, right? That is going to be there. Lot of previously, if you see in the previous session, we spoke about automation, scanning, network infrastructure, and things. But there is a limitation to scanning, right? It cannot identify all the vulnerabilities. That is why, right? So we do, even though when it comes to infrastructure security, automation vulnerability scanning helps out a lot. It can identify a lot of things. But when it comes to other things like mobile application, web application, and all, there's a lot of limitations. It is still never active. We still have to spend a lot of time with this part, right? That is the main one more problem. That is a problem out there, right? So can we completely depend on automation tools in a DevSecOps environment? Because DevSecOps understand security automation in DevSecOps plays a major role. The problem I spoke earlier, the developers to hacker ratio, how they're able to bridge that gap is to bring in automation tool and help train the developers to use that automation tools, right? So that's the thing out there. Lack of security integration, meaning we are not integrating security in a proper way, right? It is done in a bits and pieces, and you're not adding certain features or things into that. That is not been happening out there. Right. So for instance, let's say the right kind of a scanners are not used. Probably they're using a infra scanner only, or they're using a dynamic scanner only. Static scanners are not used. They're not looking at the source code. Even if they're looking at source code, they're not looking at the containers like a Dockers and other factors that are there. Right. Every step has to be carefully taken into consideration in DevSecOps. That is a challenge. uh, Insufficient security skill. I think probably, uh, I think this is the top tier, so major challenge. Uh, yes, yeah. Uh, it is a major challenge, is what I feel, because it is very difficult to get sufficient skilled personnel in DevSecOps environment. We will see a lot of openings, and we'll see they still go on. No one is filling up that position. Even I've failed to fill positions for my teams, right? One of the main reasons why I've got into training after, even though I work on an IT security perspective, is that for two roles, for two job positions, I actually ended up interviewing 968 people over 6 months period. And amount of people who were good enough for the role were only about 20 plus. About 20 plus candidates were there, and I could not hold on to them, right? Because by the time I offered them, okay, they told by that before they could join the organization, someone else would have given them a better offer than that thing. And there are cases, out of 20 guys out there, uh, most of them, right? Most of them got double the offer what we were offering. That's a major thing, problem. Uh, that is why a lot of times nowadays companies are focusing on training their own DevOps engineers to take up security also, right? They're trying to change them security changes and things like that. Again, the next concept is cultural shift. The approach for DevOps is actually different, and the way you look at it is different. And because if you see traditional way of doing it, you're still developing the code, you're still testing the application, you're doing the same thing. But in what order you're doing and what is the time span given for that is just changing out there. So that is a cultural shift that is happening in DevOps. And the same thing has to happen in DevSecOps as well, right? Before, DevOps was taken as just to make the software development time reduced for a lesser price and an efficient team to work on. But security was an afterthought consideration. Now you have to look at the culture where security is considered from day one, right? At the design phase itself, the security has to be there. And that is the requirement out there. And the technical depth is similar to insufficient security skill. The what happens in a technical depth is that you see, um, it's a constantly changing environment. A new technology comes into play, and the way you do the approaches will be changing. For instance, you may be working on Jenkins, then you move to GitLab or any other thing. Then you need to have that technical depth in there to have a better understanding. Either the team need to be trained or get a skilled person for that who has that depth to take into that consideration. right? Who can has a much more deeper knowledge, help them identify things rather than being identified at a later stage, right? Sorry about that. There's a difference. Two times it's been there, right? So overcoming security challenges in DevOps, right? Uh, what do you mean by shift left approach, right? What do you mean by shift left approach? So basically what is happening here is that what we used to think, right? So what we used to think, once the production goes on live, right? The application goes live, and this is taken as a middle point. On the left side is the design phase, implementation phase, coding phase, and testing phase. On the right side is the pen test phase. So, so basically, this is talking about pen test on the right side. So, all we can talk about is security on the right side of it. So, what they want is to bring the security to on the left side of the production. Just a second, guys. Sorry, guys. Sorry for the disturbance. Yeah. So basically, shift left is bringing everything back to the on the design phase, not waiting for the application services to be created. Previously, what used to focus more on, right? We used to focus more on the dynamic assessment testing. Once the application is developed, we do testing, we put up a data, we do information add into that and see the database is populated. And then we are going to look and then test application for that. Testing as a code was never done before, and that was introduced, right? So at the coding level itself, we have to look at the security is any issues out there. And this is one of the main then issues that is going to be of concern, right? Sonar Cube is something we use it for this to understand this process, right? And continuous security, meaning integrate continuous security monitoring and testing into DevOps pipeline. So meaning the the different phases we are introducing security, meaning at the design phase, there is something called as a threat analysis. We look at things and how do we add security there. Then at the coding phase, at the testing phase, and again at the dynamic and everything, we are going to work on that, right? In training and awareness, the equip your team necessary. Here, we are going to constantly work with teams to help them understand what is the skill set that is required, then train them in those skill set. And it is constantly evolving, meaning the teams are constantly getting trained out here, right? So same thing here, what we saw. So software development lifecycle shift left option. So we are actually adding security at the different stages of it. So in some cases, what happens is that, let me see. So in the design phase, there's something called as a threat modeling that happens. So when the requirement comes in, we'll look at the application, and then we'll see, right? So what are the different attacks that could be possible out there? As a DevSecOps engineer, You're going to work with the developers and you're going to tell them this attack is going to be happening out in this functionality. You have to write the code in such a way or design the application in such a way that it is going to mitigate that. So we are going to add security features at the design phase itself. And once that is done, once the code is written for that particular design, we are going to look at that code and analyze, is there any vulnerabilities at the code level? So this usually occurs after the deployment stage, but here we are looking at the earlier stages itself. And during the testing, normal application testing is going to happen. Along with that, security testing is going to happen. Now, the previously we talked about, you know, dash dynamic assessment testing and things like that. That is going to be worked on it. Yep. And here it's not only about from an application perspective, we are going to look from an OS perspective as well, operating system perspective as the underlying infrastructure, right? The software that is used for running the application is the Docker to the latest level and things and all those things we have to look into that part. So not only the part, and even those things have to be implemented in the DevSecOps pipeline as well. That is the kind of thing that we need to look into the base, right? So what is it? So we have a little bit of understanding. So what is a DevOps? From a definition perspective, a contraction of development, security, and operations in an evolutionary leap of software development. This approach integrates security principles, practices, and tools in DevOps. It aims to take everyone involved in a project accountable for security to implement security decision, action of the same scale and speed development, operations and decision and action. So basically, what we're talking about here is that previously, when we go with the DevOps or the traditional approach, the security was only a responsibility of the security team. If in case they have security team, they are responsible for that. The DevOps engineers or developers or testers or project managers were not keen or concerned about security. But now the attacks are so common and so difficult to track and things and all because it becomes very difficult, right? I've seen a lot of cases of big financial transaction companies where they give out loans on a large scale, right? They're talking to thousands of customers every day and they're dealing with that. They told when we went out them and told we want to test your application. See, we believe, we had some kind of an exposure to their application because we helped them out implement something out there. So when we saw their implementation, we knew there's its thing is not there, right? So they told we are following everything, right? When we are getting tested by a vendor as well, and we are following the absolute DevOps. And when we saw their DevOps and they were doing to the point, everything is containerized, everything GitHub and everything out there. But when we tested their application, they had not given the importance of security. That level, we ended up giving them a almost an 80-page report, and they could not fathom that so much vulnerabilities were there, right? So much so that one of their GitHub repositories was actually open to public. The main application source code, anyone could have copied it, and they were not aware of it. And they had an immediate, breakdown. And they had a meeting and they went out. We helped them fix those vulnerability. It took some time, so we prioritize and things like that, right? And then we got security into their environment in a DevSecOps environment. We moved into that part. So because it is for them, it is a cultural shift. They do understand development, they do understand operations, they can get things done. But without an expert in someone with a security, cannot possibly understand what is the impact that is going to be there. Right? So that is the main concern. So what? So why should someone go? Right? I give an example of there. What is the advantage? But why should someone go with DevOps? Proactive security. By integrating security from start, potential vulnerabilities are identified and addressed earlier. You know, and for me as a pen tester, as an hacker, DevSecOps teams are a bit of an issue for me, right? For my work, right? From a security perspective, they're very good and you should be there. What happens is that when I'm testing an application for a non-DevSecOps, right, or a DevOps team and things and all, I'll be happy because I'll be showcase so many vulnerabilities and things like that. and sending out a report on a Friday, spoiling the developers' weekend. That is something nice for me. It's not a good thing, but it is a vulnerability issue, right? So that is going to be there. But we have seen because in a DevSecOps team, when they have implemented DevSecOps properly, it actually increases the workload for me. The main reason is when DevSecOps implemented properly, number of vulnerabilities I find in application goes down significantly, right? I'm telling like uh, going from 20, 25 vulnerabilities, critical vulnerabilities, and then it will plummet all the way up to 3 to 4 vulnerabilities, and that to a low level. That is vulnerabilities which you cannot think about as something which can be used to compromise a network or anything like that, right? So in those situations, I will have to write an extra report telling that why I found only 4 vulnerabilities, and I have to give them a list of all the attacks that I've done, right? And then again, I have to write an appreciation letter to the development team on to telling that they have done a very good job, which I don't like as a pen tester, right? So, but that's a good thing, right? So, as the security, because everyone goal, including mine, is to have a secure application, and that is what is important. And having DevSecOps, it's going to help you out find that, and you can mitigate a lot of things, right? A lot of uh, one more thing we can give an example is from a design perspective. One of the websites we checked out, we tested, was using an Bitcoin based, the cryptocurrency based gaming. It's something similar to uh, not a gambling kind of a thing, but it is traditional arcade games, right? Open one of the doors will have an goat or the prize will be there and things like that, or it could be that spin the wheel and things like that. Couple of things were there, and what happened was that they got hacked as soon as they launched. They got hacked. They lost about 20 or 30,000 dollars within 30 minutes time, and they panicked. Then they stopped the website. They told we are no longer supporting out there, and they came to us understanding that they had not come to us. They had not taken security as a consideration, and they came to us and they told what is that and how can we fix it. We told you cannot fix it because it is the design itself is wrong. You have to go back to the drawing board and then rework on it. And if they had implemented security at the starting stage itself, right, so they won't have lost. Not only think about, it's not the 40,000 they have lost out there. They took about 45 days more to get back in a incremental way. They did not come back to that. It took them a couple of months to come completely be operational. Think about the money lost by them, how much it's going to be there, right? And that is where we can see the second point, cost effective. Rectifying security issues later in the development lifecycle can be expensive. DevSecOps mitigate this cost, right? So think about, don't, let's not think about from the business perspective, the money lost from the business perspective, that is going to be there. Think about from an operations perspective. Have to, if that particular application takes 3 developers to 2 testers to do it, and I will have to pay them if they take about 3 months again to rectify that issue. I have to pay them 3 months extra salary for all of them, and again the cost of running those things, and again for not generating the revenue, right? That is also we have to consider. The cost of operations are also very important. Making a design changes is going to be very difficult, right? Think about stitching a dress, right? So if we understand the customer's needs well in advance, and we can think about as a tailor or a designer, you understand, okay, these are the problems that could arise in this particular situation, right? So can I do some extra enforcement into this so that the dress does not tear or end, right? If you don't consider that at the design stage, once the dress is stitched completely and everything, then you come up with an issue. Now fixing the dress at that time is going to be very expensive, and it is not going to have the same impact as well. It's no longer same. There's also a compromised position out there, right? Third is DevSecOps is speed, by catching and correcting security issues earlier. as I told, right? So when we go into pen testing applications, which is not having DevSecOps, we identify a lot of vulnerabilities, right? We identify a lot of vulnerabilities. What happens is that it will take more time to fix it, right? There are cases, there are cases where it has gone up to 6 months, right? Where it has gone to 6 months. So they will have a priority which will to be done and things and all, but none of for to clear all of it, it can go up to 3 months, say 3 to 6 months time. And that is a lot of time. Actually it will affect the application is not fully available out there because of that. But if they've done the same thing at the earlier stages, look at the code earlier and see there's a vulnerability here. Okay, what can we do and how do we overcome this? It would have been fixed much more. And one more problem is you can see the developers once they write the code and once it's gone testing, going back and making changes is going to take time also for them. The speed is going to be reduced. Why? They'll forget what has been written out there. And it takes time for them to reanalyze the code, and then it's going to affect the application is going to there. Right. Collaboration is going to be improved as well when we talk about DevSecOps. Uh, think from this perspective, right? So as a pen tester, I go after the application is created. When I tell this is the issue, this is a security, there's a lot of miscommunication that is happening out there. There's no proper collaboration because I will be interacting with one person. I will tell them this is the vulnerability and this is how you fix it. And there's a miscommunication. The way it gets projected to the other team members might differ and they might fix it in a different way than what is required, right? And again, it adds to the time. The collaboration is not going to be there, right? So having a DevSecOps, there is always a process, right? You're raising the tickets in the Jira, telling them this, everyone's looking at it. So whoever is having an issue, they can reach out to you and things. The environment is enabled to have a better communication. Anyone can reach out the security team whenever they want there, and they can work with them at this code level, at the design level, at the testing level, or even at the deployment level, right? So we will look out as a whole. So what is going to be there? And not only the developers, even the system administrators are reaching out to understand how can they make the application much more better way of going about it. So that's going to be main thing out here, right? So a lot of times, from my understanding, is DevOps does not mean CI/CD by default, right? CI/CD is part of it, going to help you out. It makes it much more easier. Using Docker's containers, getting a standardized approach, getting the operations team and the development combined, and getting to work on them is what DevOps is for me. And CI/CD is going to make it much more easier, right? There'll be a lot of things that need to be automated because you don't want to build I think, let's say you're building, making modification to the software once in a week, and you don't want to do the entire process of building that application every week. It is actually wastage of your hours and times like that. So if you can automate that, that is going to be a very important concept, right? So same thing can be used in the DevSecOps perspective. And CI/CD pipeline is mandatory. For a DevOps environment, it may not be mandatory to have a CI/CD pipeline, but for a DevSecOps environment, without CI/CD pipeline, it is going to be very difficult, right? So because you cannot, every time the code is changed, you cannot come back to the application, then take that code, put it to a scanner, and then look at that output, what is coming out there, and then give that report back to the team, and then they're going to look into that. And again, when it comes to DAS, running a scanner on the application, then taking that report and giving back, that is not going to be the easy, right? And if it's you have to do it every couple of days, that's going to be even difficult out there, right? And again, this is the situation where we are talking about the pen testers are very difficult to find, or security engineers are very difficult to find. And we will not have enough security engineers to do this task in a relaxed way, right? There's always that is going to be there, right? So software composition analysis is basically about the supporting software that are used in the application. Like it may be Django application. So Django is a supporting software. Python is there. Then MySQL may be the database or any other database, MongoDB that is there. And they may be using front end. They may be using JavaScript, jQuery or things like that. Either these software third-party tools we are using, are they having any kind of a security issues or not? Identifying that is important. Right? There are cases, right? We couple of couple of in the previous year, I think 2023. I think so. We had a particular tool was running on Python, and we were running it as a product, right? And it was hosted on GCP. Uh, GCP told you got 24 hours before you could continue because you're having a fundable component, right? So that because when we saw the report from Google Cloud provider, then we saw that particular Python version that we're having it's having a security issue, and we can't use it out there, right? If we had included CI/CD pipeline and checked software composition analysis earlier, we would have been able to understand the security vulnerability at an earlier stage and fix it. Because all that required was to rewrite the code, not nothing like that, to reinstall the newer version of Python. But there was some issue because the newer version did not work properly with our codes. So small modifications were needed. So we have to retest everything out there, right? So now doing a manual testing and everything or code level, it's going to be very difficult because in 48 hours time, everything has to be complete. The code has to be rewritten, the testing has to be done and things. If we had done CI/CD pipeline, it would have been much more streamlined, right? We would have had more time in our hand and things like that, right? Penetration testing and vulnerability analysis, again, it has to be manual at the end of the thing process. Uh, Vulnerability assessment can happen in the CI/CD pipeline. DAST and SAST is nothing but vulnerability assessment in a different way, in a fun format, right? Pen testing is something it is done manually. We can't do anything about that. But internal teams do a better job and they can reduce the impact of it, right? So in a typical, so there's so many components out here. Source code analysis nowadays, different products are already available out there. Gitbucket and the Git providers, centralized Git repositories are providing services to identifying the coding perspective, right? So what is the issue with the code and things? Then we looked out there. Most common one we are using nowadays is SonarQube and Fortify. That is there. For running the services, we are seeing Jenkins and Azure DevOps are there. But again, WASP and Tenable IO is used for scanning, right? All those things that can be used out there. And again, for testing and infrastructure scanning, we can use Tenable is nothing but there's a tool called Nessus, right? So Tenable is the a company that owns that tool. And that is again, so it will be help you out. See, this is the tool that you can see here and different, right? For artifact generation, we can predominantly in our projects, we see we're using Maven and things that is there, right? And deployment, again, we're using other AWS, Terraform, and cloud for running out there, right? For every stage, there is a kind of a tool that is available. For source code analysis, SonarQube. For dynamic testing, WASP, Gauntlet, Tenable is there for dynamic assessment testing. Uh, in this, again, there's one thing that is missing is the SCA compliance, right? How do you check for the SCA, the dependencies? That is not here. So we are seeing something like sync and, there's WAS tools as well for that to identify component related for that. Okay. So once the deployment is complete and all the security features are done, it is also important to continuously monitor because new vulnerabilities are going to be coming always constantly coming. We have to look out for that, and predominantly Nagios and Splunk is what is going to be used, and UpGuard and Catchpoint are the newer ones that are available out there, right? So this is how typically that is going to come into the factor. So now we have understood a bare concept of what DevSecOps is and what are the different phases and why certain thing is more important, right? So there is going to be major issues of that, right? So any questions till now before we could go on the next phase? Any questions? Anyone is having any questions? Guys, any questions? Larry, your voice is not clear. It's having a lot of noise. Okay. Menon, you want to take a break or you want to wait for some more time and then we go on?
Hello?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, sorry. Um, Firstly, I don't know how to ask the question very well because
Oh,
I felt that maybe because new, I'm new to the system, so I don't know if I want to be sure. Maybe I'm on the same page with you, sir. Can you hear me very well, sir?
yeah, I can hear you, Larry.
I've heard about the Nexus, but someone told me that Nexus is used to scan all the vulnerabilities of a website. I don't
Correct.
know how true is that. That
Uh,
with only
yes, Nessus. Yeah, continue.
that with only Nexus that I am good to go. So I don't know how far. I don't know how true is that. So,
Mhm.
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's an excellent question. Nessus is a scanning tool. Predominantly, we prefer Nessus for infrastructure scanning. Okay, and even for web application, it is does not come close to. There are a lot of other tools that are there, like OS Zap, Akunetics. It is having a web scanner out there. NetSparker is another tool that are there. They do much more better at identifying the vulnerabilities in a website than Nessus would do. Nessus is an excellent tool for scanning operating system, networking devices, firewall for any vulnerabilities out there. Right? That is going to be there. Uh, but again, there are certain functionalities the scanners are not good at. Right? For instance, checking the authentication and authorization mechanisms, broken access control, SSRF attacks, and those kind of an attacks, it cannot be identified using a scanner tools like Nessus or NetSparker. Okay, if you're thinking if any company thinks Nessus is good enough for them to identify and they're good, they're in for a bad. That is the problem was with the company which I gave as an example, whom we gave them very large list of vulnerabilities because they were running scanner and they told they have got secure. So it is not enough. Nessus is not enough.
Okay. So, what are you suggesting for us now, or what are you telling us to do now? I
Uh,
mean, based
you
on this.
you it, you know the preliminary whenever you get an application for testing, you have to do run a scan. The run as a scan is mandatory. That is going to be there, and on top of that, you have to do a manual pen testing on that application as well to find for things which may be missing out there. And Nessus is not good enough to manage the authentication and authorization. You have to do, meaning you can use Kali Linux and Burp Suite as a tools for doing the manual pen testing and work on them. Yeah. So
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
welcome. Yes, madam.
Yeah, I have one question. So there is one few requirement what we are seeing that is called AI SecOps. So what
Hmm.
their plan is like using AI it is not AI like or better to say automation on
Okay.
security. So, what is
Okay.
your thought? How if we can see this like security practice with the automated way in near future? Like,
Yes, yes. So now AI is very important. It is coming up, it is picking up uh, in the current scenario. The main reason for that is, let's say, when I'm scanning a web application or an application using Nessus scanner, right? It is very extensive, very extensive, very much interactive out there. But there is a lot of false positives, right? Some cases, even when vulnerability is not there, it will show it as vulnerable. And that is a major issue because when you're scanning for a large enterprise, filtering out that data, and because we have to verify that manually in those situations, and that takes a lot of time, right? And there are certain situations it may miss out certain things, false negatives, even though it is a vulnerability. So that is one place AI is going to be there, right? That is why it's called AI is there SecOps. One more thing is that AI is getting much more and more intelligent as the day passes by. Uh, because what happens is that, as we saw in the previous session, when we talk about pen testing, there's a phase called initial recon phase and scanning phase. Without doing that, we cannot go with the exploitation, meaning we cannot hack, right? And based on the information what we get during the scanning phase, is we are going to decide how to hack for that, right? The problem with a lot of people is that they are bad with planning and things like that. And now the AI engines are being trained to analyze that part, right? So now it is going to do a continuous approach. So meaning it is going to come up, do a scan, AI is going to run the scan, then it is going to look at the data that is given, it is going to analyze it, it comes up with a plan, and that plan has to be automatically not, it's not going to be allowed to hack, right? A human has to oversee that part. That is what they want to do, because I think letting AI to completely do things, it may not be a right thing, right approach to go, right? So they're going to work with that perspective, and they're going to start working on that pattern. Okay. And once that attack is completed after being authorized by a human out there, it will get the attack results as well. So now looking at that results, it is going to redo the scan, how to do it better way, right? How to do it in a can they do it process, and the same cycle continues again and again, and every time it passes through, it comes up with a different approach, right? And that's how we can tell we are using AI out there. For all of it, it is the non-availability of the skill set is the major reason why there are a lot of companies are jumping into providing AI skill sets, working on AI, because there's a huge demand for this particular skill set, right? And
now,
nowadays, yeah.
if you think about the AI training, I suppose
Mhm.
AI face some. If you give some task to some AI engine, now what will do? AI will train itself with those information.
Correct.
So what is your thought? Will it bring more attack in future?
Yes, I
Because
think see, to be frank, these state actors are already working on AI-based attacks much more behind the doors. No one is talking about, all the major countries will have an offensive team, right? Hackers, quality, top quality hackers that are there. And there is a limitation to that, right? Because again, you don't get someone like Einstein, you get once in a millennium. That is what we get. So we can't wait to get the quality people all the time. So we should be able to come up with a new and new way to attack. So they're training these AI machines to come up new attack vectors, right? And
apart from
especially
that,
if, hmm,
sorry, I'm just because my
no, no,
I
no
think
problem.
I was just using your time. Apart from that, now while there are so many small company, they are trying to utilize AI on their infrastructure. Now
Hmm,
what we are joining in a webinar, and their concern was like all of this AI are based out of using API, and they have a AI engine, and while they are collecting all the data from that particular company to train that AI.
Correct.
Now, that is actually a breach if you are, using AI on until unless you are hosting the whole AI on your own environment.
Correct. Right.
So will it is it as a reason of last 1 year we have seen the biggest breaches in US market, or will it increase drastically in upcoming future?
At the moment, in the future, it is going to increase drastically. Right, because this is going to be a new arms race where people are going to try AIs to come up with mitigations, not only attack, they have to prevent attacks, and they are going to be again with the AI too that is going to attack. So which is what, because the both have to have both, it's going to be important for us. So that is going to be there. At the moment, it is not reached up to the level at the market level what we are seeing out there. Still early steps, and one of the major problems is the ethics part out here, right? Where is the data, what data, and things like that. What is the limitations for an AI and things like that? Because even though the AI is able to make a decision, it cannot perform certain actions without a human clicking on it, looking it, reviewing that action, then performing that, right? Authorizing that action that has to be done out there. So AI, the problem with AI is that right now there's a lot of ethics problem, uh, because what data is, because accessing a data, right? Even from a pen testing perspective, even if you're pinging someone, some company out can be taken as an attack also, right? You might give out some IP address, random IP address, and do ping, and continuously it is pinging every fraction of a second. That can is also taken as an attack, right? So it is getting bit more difficult. Again, every country is having, the data cannot go out of their company, especially if you look at Saudi. No information about a Saudi citizen is supposed to be stored outside, meaning the data cannot be taken from a server in Saudi and taken stored. So that's why you see a lot of companies are putting in infrastructure, AWS, Azure, Dropbox, and everything. So the data is going to remain in those places. So there's a limitation, but it's still NIST is working on the ethics part. So we will see a lot of action in that part. But at the time, I feel AI is not capable enough for doing it, right? Because the reason why ChatGPT is good is that millions and sorry billions of users are using it on everyday basis, and it gets more data to work and understand how things are working, right? It is able to. But when it comes to AI and cybersecurity, the data is not there. So
Yes.
it will take more time to get a quality.
So I was reading, and it is already published. Some of the in Verizon, and there is a one blog called Nobi. They are telling that I can share if it's required. Uh, like 74% hackers think like AI, they are using AI tools to do the hacking, and
Hmm.
77% use AI technology to hacks.
Yes. So correct. So that is going to be at the entry level only, like sorting the attack vectors and looking at the patterns that we are getting out there and things. For that, it is going to analyze it part, right?
Okay.
So it is because if AI is weaponized, uh, then it is going to be huge difficulty, right? Amount of they can completely, because a smaller countries will not have answer for them, right? So because the any if you take any major countries, the big G20 will have a lot of money for, they will not have any budget. There's an unlimited budget they can invest, right? This top 10 countries or top 20 countries, because just for their espionage team, for cracking passwords, they will have supercomputers, which is not disclosed to the public, right? So if you think AI is going to be, very useful, think about how it's going to be done, right? Think about password cracking, how AI can be used to um, understand what could be your password, predicting your pattern, right? On a random, it may be 1 million password, but if I can reduce from 1 million the most possible passwords for you to bring it down to 10,000, it's a huge time saver, right? So that is going to be there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question, guys? Okay, so let's continue. So next is,
Sorry,
yeah,
one quick question.
yeah,
Now,
please.
it's DevSecOps, right? So
Yes.
my question is, as a site reliability engineer, do you have to have knowledge of DevSecOps as well?
Site reliability engineer, not much, right? So, but it will also help you to automate your process if you're having that part. So you may be running a lot of scans and things like that. Uh, so you can try to use it for that purpose, but from a site reliability, not much, you know, because you're not working with the code level or the application code at an everyday basis, right? So you're predominantly working on the operations perspective. Uh, for instance, if you're creating the virtual machines and then giving access to them and installing services on those machines, then giving access to the developers, then probably it can help, right? Um, with that, because you can give them the steps and they will be able to do that process by them, so if you don't have to worry about that part, so you'll be able to run they will be able to run the scans and things like that. If you get any doubt, they can reach out to you. But if you're someone who is working at the core infrastructure, right, DevSecOps is not something that's going to be useful for you. You're still going to be working with the traditional approach. And nowadays it's changing for an
Yeah,
yeah.
I would like to add, last couple of days or couple of weeks, we got few requirement where SRE engineer, they are looking for a SRE engineer who have an idea or holistic knowledge about cybersecurity. Now,
Yeah.
the question is why? SRE engineers, Karthik, allow me for 2 minutes, okay?
Yeah, sure.
So, while those company or which company who have already implemented their automation or DevOps in their infrastructure, now they remove the like then those DevOps engineer, they are now managing the production. Suppose you have an app. Now DevOps, it's a, like you are going to use DevOps while you are developing the apps until it's production. Now while your app is already, your like development is complete, your testing is complete, your QA is completed, you have up, your app is up and running, and every day you have a good number of traffic. Now you need a SRE engineer, site reliability engineers. So their job is to make sure that to check the logs, check their uses, check the concurrent users, their behavior, to make sure that the app or the application is up and running always. Now, if there is some issues happening, if there is some bugs, then you need to go check the logs and mitigate the issues, right?
Yes.
Now here is the why the company now the same thing. There is a two different kind of bugs may happen. One, the real bug. Another, somebody is trying to hack your system. Now for that, companies is trying to hire two different people. One is for cybersecurity, one is for SRE. Cybersecurity people or the DevSecOps people, mm, their main job is to make sure that their app is secure, and the other, this SRE engineers, their job is to make sure that their infrastructure is there is a no real technical bug. Now company came up as an idea that how about if we can hire a single guy who can manage, like whenever there is a log, he can understand that okay, this is a security threat or normal bugs. Based on his understanding, then he can either strengthen his security or ask for the developers to remove the bug. So we are seeing last couple of months that even in the SRE position also, recruiters are looking some of the security skill sets.
That's right. Because now they are asking you, do you have knowledge of monitoring security? Even with the SRE positions, they want you to be to have some kind of knowledge or to be savvy also in that area. So which means probably like maybe they want to combine them now and have
Yes.
just one person doing it. So that was the reason why I asked that question.
So
Yeah.
before, DevOps engineer was different. Cybersecurity teams, DevOps teams was different. Cybersecurity teams was different. Then they came up with a newer position called DevSecOps. That is our aim, because that is we don't have, because we have placed so many students on that position. The reason, the market has high demand, not too much competition. Now new position, and the DevOps and SR is somehow, to become a SR engineer you have to have a good understanding about DevOps, right? It is like the same person wearing a different cap. Now this SRE ops is going to come, is coming, and it is going to go more and more, this kind of trend. Because company, they felt like, okay, why should we should hire two different people? Either now DevSecOps engineer, they can manage both of them, but they don't have a too many experience on the monitoring tools, log monitoring tools, right? Like Grafana, Prometheus, those kind of, because they move mostly on the security part and some of the DevOps part. Now that's the reason they are also looking for SRE engineers who have the experience on security part as well. So they can, at the same time, they can understand and take the reasonable actions based on the attack or real bugs. So in we are seeing like in an operation field, everything is there trying to combine and trying to hide skill set, so they can reduce their manpower to save the budget or save the expense, right?
Yes.
Do you
So
did I?
predominantly, I think, Louis, you're going to be working on something called as a blue teaming, right? So when we're
Yeah.
talking about blue teaming, basically it's about defense and things like that. Uh, but going from a red teaming, understanding how an attack occurs and things like that, it will actually help you to understand the logs better, right? So there will be training for you to tell how to use that particular tool and things. But when you look at that log, it will not make sense unless until you understand the attack out there. So you have to have an understanding of how the attack occurs, right? So let's say if there is an attack on SSH, a brute forcing attack is happening out there, that there's a log out there. So you have to, the machine or the tool might tell there is an SSH attack, but when you look at the log, it does not make sense. At that time, having knowledge of the attack will definitely help you. So whatever the things, the concepts, it may not run as an automation tool, but understanding the security part of it will actually help you with that part, right? So because a lot of when I've been, you will see everyone is going to be a hacker someday. And that is what the current path is going towards. Everyone will need to know how an attack is going to work and things like that. That's how it's going to go, right? Because even the developers, I go and train developers as well, and because they keep on making the same mistake again and again, then we go there and tell them, this is the attack, this is how I'm doing, this is what I'm looking at, this is where I'm getting the information. Then the light bulbs goes for them, and when I'm talking about developers, the teams, I'm also talking about the operation teams as well, because we're doing attacks at the operation level as well. So we divide the training to operations team separately and development team separately, and we tell from an operation perspective. Because when I get a Nessus scan out there, when I'm running there, I have to tell them that how this attack is, Nessus is actually attacking in some way. So you have to tell them what are the things for scanning, what are the messages or the packet was sent by the Nessus, and how it is predicting that this vulnerability is there, right? So that will help out in that perspective. So anyone else having any questions? Let's continue. So next topic is threat modeling. Threat modeling is basically understanding what is the problems that could be faced, right? What are the securities that could be happen out there? So let's understand, in a simple way. There is a website. Okay. Sorry. I'm not going to look at all the functionalities that are there. I'm going to just look at the first page. That is the login page. Okay. In the login page, there is a two button, right? Username and password, right? And again, there's also something called as the forgot password page also. Forgot password also. And that link also is there. There are, I can tell there are about 20 different types of on bare minimum attacks that could happen here, right? And a lot of people think forgot password cannot be compromised. It can be compromised. I can click on it and try to make changes to that link to get the password reset link for some other users or things like that, right? So now, as an attacker, I know these 20 attacks. So what happens is that when the developers are designing the application, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to sit with them. I will ask them, what is the functionality you're looking at that? So they are going to tell I'm going to looking at something functionality of login functionality here, right? So I'll tell them, I'll give them a list of these are the list of things that could happen out there. And these are the mitigation steps, right? These are the mitigation steps that is going to be present out there. So now this process of identifying, right, the attacks earlier and fixing it at the earliest stage is called threat modeling, right? Here, there's also something called as a priority, right? Because certain things, let's say if the password, like in login process, password policy is important. If there is no password policy, meaning I can have password PSS as my password, then that is a critical vulnerability that should not be allowed and things like that, right? So that is there. But in case, let's say they are telling the password character should be 8 character, and they're supposed to have a minimum of one uppercase letter, one lowercase letter, and a number, right? It is also good to have a special character. But what if they miss out on the special character? They're only enforcing this much. So now this becomes a low priority, right? This is can be taken into immediately or not. So they'll tell, okay, this is there. Yes, it gives a sufficient amount. This will add a little bit more, make it a bit more difficult. But this is a little bit less priority than allowing a less character password, right? So similarly, there are a lot of other things that comes into play when you're talking about this process out there. Then that is what we're supposed to be looking at, right? So define safety requirements. Then we tell this is what is required of this minimum security perspective. Then I can identify the likely threats, right? That could be there. Then I'm going to do a threat assessment. I'm telling what could be there, and then I'll say this is what is going to happen. You have to write that part. Then you'll write the mitigation, right? So you're going to sit down and help with the developer and tell them this is what is going to be mitigate that, and they will write that process. They write the code level itself, or maybe configuration perspective, they'll make configuration changes and things like that. For instance, we will tell in a SSH perspective, don't allow root access from a remote environment, right? So all they have to do that is a threat that is happening out there. What is the mitigation? All I have to do is that go to the SSH configuration file. There, there will be something called as root, remote root login enable. I just have to change it from yes to no out there, or make sure that is no is there only, right? It could be as simple as that, right? So that is mitigation and confirmation of threat mitigation. So how do you confirm the threat mitigation? Two ways. You can go the configuration, actually go there and check that is happening, and also do an attack on the system as well, right? Try to log in as root user from a remote machine, and it is allowing or not. Try to do a brute forcing of that machine from in Kali Linux or something like that. That is going to be there, right? So that is the basically a threat modeling that is going to be there. And next thing is defense in depth. right? So one of the main reasons, as someone spoke about, you're into maintenance and things like that, SRE position. That is the reason why is that even we are looking security in depth. No stone is left unturned in this situation. Not only from an application perspective, from an entire infrastructure perspective, also we have to look at the security, meaning the development team, the management team, the marketing team, the sales team, even the front desk also has to be secured. So that is what income additional layer exists, right? So meaning the logic behind is that adding more layers to the security, right? For instance, you can think about a simple example that whenever you have something valuable and you're going out, you're going to keep that in the safe and then lock the safe, then lock the cupboard, then lock the door, then again lock the main house door. Then probably if there is a gate available for the house, you can want to lock that as well before going out. So now there are multiple stages of security out there. So now thief has to take compromise each and every layer of that. He has to break the main gate, then again compromise the door lock, then room lock, then cupboard, and then finally come to the safe. So this might give us an additional time to protect. And again, when there's so many things that is happening out there, a low end thief is not going to be successful at all because you'll not be able to do that part out there. Whereas we'll need the higher end sophisticated thief to go about it. So again, it reduces the threat as well, right? Instead of 100 people trying to steal data things from you, it will drastically go down to 3 to 4 people, where whom you can again have a proper monitoring for that. That is what defense in that basically is going to be there. Source code, this is something is very difficult if you're doing it manually, right? So we have seen what happens is that uh, the tools are going to look for the vulnerabilities and things. Yeah. I think someone is mic is not muted. So here, right. So here, what happens is that the source code certain times we have seen when you're doing out there, the keys that is used for API access may be there undisclosed in the source code. There are cases where they have kept actual password for the application in the source code itself, right? So that was used for pen testing for development purpose to increase the speed that developer had introduced some kind of a code out there. But he forgot to remove that password out of there before pushing it to production out there. And we saw that information, you know, code tampering, code changes to code can be made maliciously if not monitored. And this is especially true if the nowadays we see GitHub is used explicitly, right? To add, you manage your code and things like that. Are you sure you're managing the security for the GitHub properly, right? So it is not only about managing your DevOps environment, your GitHub is also supposed to be there. If you are this this has happened previously, right? So there was a attack called as the FTP smiley attack. At that time, they did not have the GitHub, but what they did was they went and they hacked the FTP server source code, right, on that server, and they added a malicious content to that. So meaning if anyone who have installed that particular version of FTP, the hacker will be able to compromise it, right? And recently also we see one of the zipping tools in Linux, it was not managed. I think not managed properly. There was a source code, it had a backdoor. So anyone using that particular zipping tool got where it was they were able to easily hack them, right? And that one, it is one of the developers found out there was some, he thought it took an extra couple of seconds, 2 or 3 seconds extra to compile that code. Then he thought, okay, fine, what is there? Then he look at the source code and he saw there's an that could be there. Right. So that is also there. And the injection attacks are there as well. Right. Injection attacks like command injection, SQL injection, and other things, we can be identified in the source code because Sonar Cubes is much more capable of understanding what's happening out there. It look at that code and tell this some vulnerabilities you cannot go with this part, right? That is true. And finally, data exposure. Sensitive data can be exposed through code, commit message, and files. There are cases where uh, the code itself is having certain times increasing because their developers sometimes are not able to write the logic properly or they don't have time for that. They could hard code sensitive information into the application, right? Anyone is having access to that application will be able to look at that part and see, okay, fine, that's there. And sometimes we have seen, right, in the code, Google API key for the API services for Google, like Google Maps and things, are exposed in the source code only, and it is not secured properly. And because customers thinking I'm getting for the Google Map services, because when you use it commercially, the Google Map, let's say in your website, you have an part where it will show in the Google Map where exactly your office or the shop is located. You have to pay for that. Google is not giving free of that further. So you have to pay for that service, and other people can use your service code and put it in their website, and anyone accessing their website clicking on the Google Maps will be charged you. They are going to charge you. So because that is also one time we saw that, and client did not realize, he was thinking, okay, why is that we're not getting the number of site visitors to Google Map requests. Is they were trying to figure it out when they luckily we tested their application, then they're telling, okay, this is what is happening for the last couple of months. We thought something else, the code may not be written properly. We're looking at the code and things. That is the thing, right? So there are a lot of things because when you look at the source code, when we train developers, right, when you talk about them and when you talk about hacking, and there are times they when you go back, right, the training goes for a couple of days, they're going back to their code and looking at it. Okay, some issue is there, and in case in the second day or the third day they bring their laptops and show them this is the code. I think what you told is right. We are when I'm looking at the code, I can make out now, right? So before they did not understand all that. So the code plays an important role. Securing is that is also very important, right? So GitHub code security is very important, like access control, pull request and things, and protect branches, security advisor. Who you are going to allow access to a GitHub is very important, right? There are cases where employees are removed or they have left the organization, they'll be still be having access to the GitHub repository. They still that their IDs will still work. It is not been done. So that is also a vulnerability problem. Certain times instead of making it private, they would have made the GitHub, code as public. So anyone having link for that code repository will be able to review, right? Review code changes before they are merged. When someone is trying to push the code, don't blindly merge the code, review what's happening out there and things like that. Protect, prevent forced pushes, ensure pull requests pass checks before they're merged, right? So basic, both of them are same in different ways they are. So every action that is going to happen on the GitHub is security analysis. Someone has to look at that and say, okay, fine, this is what is happening, right? Uh, Security advisory tell people what could be the training perspective, what are the known security vulnerabilities that could happen out there. And again, GitHub dependent bot automatically keep your dependencies up to date and secure. Right on the code level, there may be some dependent software. Make sure you're using the latest versions of it. We see it is becoming a bit of an issue, and because now we might have seen For every action, Karthik, you're telling you there should be some kind of process, and that is where it is going, right? And we see a lot of zero trust nowadays that is coming. Critically, every access is going to be scrutinized. The security is growing uh, in a phenomenal way, and the more and more it becomes, very difficult for that. And that's there. Right. Container security. Uh, this increases one more set, right? What happens in when you go 15 years back, security was very easy, not difficult. At that time, for that time, it was security was difficult. But compared to now, what's happening, it is much more easier up there. Because at that time, there was a single server. Everyone used to work inside the company. They used to work on desktops. Your firewall is more than sufficient, and there was no APIs utilizations or much. And right, the technology is very basic, right? Normal browsers and things like that. Nowadays, you can access the web services from a mobile, you can access it from a browser, from a tablet. People are working from home, people are working on company laptop, people are moving away and traveling and working it. They may be connected via Starbucks or maybe unsafe network. And even, right, the technology's number of components are also increased, right? And think about container security, meaning the Docker is there. How do you know your Docker image is safe or not? You're downloading, you have in Docker, Jenkins, you're running, you're having a script, you're running it, it downloads a particular Docker version and runs it and installs it. How do you know that particular Docker version is safe or not? It is not having any vulnerable component inside that, right? How do you know for that, right? That is increased now, right? Previously, only OS have to worry. The Linux operating system, if it is safe, that is fine. Now I have to look at the Docker as well, so then again, vulnerable images that you're downloading images, is it safe or not? That is there. And the configuration of your Dockers, is it done properly or not? You not only have to focus on properly configure your Linux operating system or Windows operating system, your Dockers need to be configuration also has to be checked, right? Running containers will be subjected to attacks like process hijacking, privilege escalation, etc. So same thing, right? Runtime threats, you know, you have to check whether that vulnerability is there or not. Can I go out of it? There are cases, those attacks are fixed immediately at a critical phase where someone who is able to go out of the container and actually attack the host machine. That has happened very few number of times, but still has happened. So you have to check for those things as well. Lack of others, that is what, containers on the same host share the host OS, leading to lesser degree of isolation compared to VMs, right? For a virtual machine, there will be separate operating system. So the isolation is different, right? But in a container, that is not the case. All your containers are having a single host and they may be sharing the same hardware, hard drive and things. If there is an issue with the containers, that is going to be an issue, right? So how do I overcome these issues? It's very simple. Use trusted images. Whenever you're downloading from the Docker, right? Docker Hub, always download the latest. Don't download a particular version number. Download the latest. Follow principle of least privilege. Container should run with minimum privileges they need to function. Right. So make sure not everyone is able to run the container. Not all users are having access to the containers. Then again, containers should not have access to certain resources. That restriction should be there. And the user management plays very important, right? Then again, you have to monitor the container activities, right? Look for any suspicious behavior. This is where your Splunk or any other tool comes into play. We don't see, even though this container activity monitoring that is there, uh, we are not seeing it implemented at the container level. We see it is implemented at the enterprise level using IDPs and things like that. Still, there's a lot of add-ons are not supporting, the tools are not supporting containers the way we want them to support. What the maturity, the infrastructure level network monitoring or activity monitoring is there. It is not there at the container level, but it is coming up, it is improving fast. But right now, we don't see a lot of projects having this process, But again, this is something, it is there, right? Always make sure you are updating the softwares, looking out what is the latest version and things, and keeps on changing. Think about, I told 2023 we had a product that is adding a Python vulnerability, and GCP reached out to us. Think about, we had launched the same application in our own server. Now no GCP is there to tell that there is a vulnerability in your system, right? So how do I overcome that? So I have to proactively look for updates. We should have some kind of a steady interval, once in 10 days or once in a week or once in a fortnight. We have to look for vulnerabilities. Update, is there any new update? How do I fix it and things, right? That is there, right? Then again, as I told, strong access control. Make sure not all users have access to Dockers. Only an admin guy will be able to do. And even if you're running CI/CD pipeline, make sure only the services that are running on CI/CD is given out there, right? In some organization, what happens is that the development team can only run the CI/CD pipeline, right? They can't make any modifications. Whenever they make changes, they can go to the Jenkins and then can click on launch the pipeline. It will launch and it will get every process sorted out. But if there is a step change, something else need to be added, or some more process or one more tool needs to be added, the development team will not be everything. Then again, it will go to one more operations team. They will rewrite the script for running that and things like that. Don't give access for that. You may be tempted to give access to the developers, but they may not, they might abuse it, right? So for container security, there's a Aqua Microscanner, Anchor, and Trivi. In our training, we use Trivi Scanner for doing the container security, right? And finally, right, regular training and awareness, periodic security audits. This is important, right? Keep on training the employees. Actually, it is mandatory nowadays. It is becoming, when a new joinee comes in, they have to be given a security awareness training, right? Because 90% of the attack, what we see in real time, is because someone clicked on a link in their website, in their email, right? And give access to them on the system. From that, the hacker will gain for that. So we have to tell them what is going to there. And again, even though you're having a DevSecOps and everything has been sorted out, we still have to do a security audit. The pen testing is mandatory, but it can be less frequent now than compared to earlier, right? So that's the main thing, right? Just a second. So that is the thing. But from a job market perspective, right, this is what basically we do in DevSecOps environment. From a job market perspective, DevSecOps is growing drastically, right? You might have seen in market value, it went from 4.4 billion to $30 billion in 2000, expected to reach in 2032, right? And it is keeps on growing, right? Nowadays, the demand for pen testers have gone down. The mainly because is that they want pen tester to have DevSecOps also knowledge as well. It is not that the pen testing role is no longer sufficient, right? You need to be a DevSecOps, understand DevSecOps, help team out there, right? So it gone are the days when the companies used to finish the application, then go to a consultant like me to test their application, get the report and fix it. No, they want to do it earlier, right? We get in a lot of requests. Nowadays, we do sit with the client at the design phase itself. We do sit with them at the DevSecOps environment, tell them, break it how to run the things on there, right? So, and for that, DevSecOps, the role is growing, right? The salaries is going as well, right? So pen testers, usually we're seeing around 135K for an average, that is, right? We are seeing for someone with 4 to 5 years of experience, we are looking at, 1.5, $150,000 or $180,000 also. Your cybersecurity consultant is predominantly where your DevSecOps role comes into play. All right. So DevSecOps is a pretty new role. We don't see much of an data in real time for what is the salary, average median salary for that, but it's still high compared to others, right? The reason is cybersecurity consultants and pen testers are moving towards DevSecOps roles, and their salary is going to be in that pretty much bracket as well, right? So that's it. That's it for today when it comes to DevSecOps. So any questions, guys? Anyone having any questions or related to the content or the course or anything?
I have a one question. That is a
Yes.
question which I have received last day from with one of our very close friends of ours. Now he has a prior experience around 10, 11 years in Snow CMDB expert. Now he wants to move to cybersecurity. Now especially DevSecOps position. Now how he can set up his resume, because he don't have any prior experience in DevOps, but he has a good
Mm-hmm.
experience in cloud architect position or cloud position.
Yeah.
So how he can, now I have mentioned them that yeah, you need to some of exaggerated, you need to write some of the things in your past as well that you have worked to make, because as you have done, he have done our cybersecurity main courses with us. So probably but what I would not take his name. Um, there is a gap, right? From Snow DMDB, he wants to using cloud experience, then move directly to cybersecurity, or
Yeah.
especially in DevSecOps.